Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with you? Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be? What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Joe Roop, late as hell and mad about it, but we're still here. Thanks for joining us tonight. It is the 14th, Thursday, and the night is sultry here in Arkansas, I can tell you that. Our guest tonight, very special guest that's joining us here tonight, is Stephan Vestappen, and he's really cool because he's like being really, really cool and really patient, and I appreciate it. So we're going to get down with that too. I'm sure some of you guys know who he is if you've listened to any of the podcasts. I'm going to jump right into this though, just because we're so late. I want to do that. But thank you guys for being patient. So Stephan Vestappen is a Canadian author, researcher, and adventurer. He has written dozens of articles for various magazines and newspapers, and is the author of 8 books, including The Way of the Warrior, The 36 Strategies of Ancient China, and The Art of Urban Survival. He has worked as an instructor for St. John's Ambulance, a wilderness guide, a community organizer, and a martial arts instructor with over 35 years experience in the martial arts, including 5 years spent studying in China. He is the creator of the viral YouTube documentary, Defense Against the Psychopath, the Paradise Stolen series, and numerous other videos. And, I really, really do appreciate you being patient with me. Thank you for coming on the broadcast, man. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, no problem, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
So tell me this, it's been a while since I've talked to somebody that has gotten involved, that's involved with martial arts when it comes to spirituality. Now, I could see it. I saw it in jiu-jitsu, but kind of explain this to me, how this works with you when it comes to spirituality and, awareness and things, how you tap into it that way.
Well, I was inspired to study martial arts. Well, first of all, I was always kind of an outdoorsy guy anyways. Before I became a martial artist, I was, an avid outdoorsman, hiking, camping, canoeing, mountain climbing, I did all that stuff. So I was, okay, kind of rugged, but at the same time, I was always searching for enlightenment, basically, And I studied a lot of books, and I read a lot of books, and I joined a lot of groups. And it was Gurdjieff's and Ouspensky's book, The Fourth Way, that really encouraged me to take martial arts. And the reason for that is that Gurdjieff, first of all, he himself also took jiu-jitsu and something called Fez Les Lou, which is a Persian style of martial arts. And I searched for years to find out what the hell was Fez Les Lou. And I finally found a reference to it in a book by Robert W. Smith, who was like the most reputable writer on martial arts, because there's so much, let's face it, there's so much fraud in martial arts. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's almost an embarrassing thing to say that I'm a martial artist, because to me, most martial artists, they're just frauds. But Robert W. Smith had actually traveled the world and studied martial arts, and he worked for an oil company. He was an oil engineer, and he was stationed in Iran. And he came across somebody that was an expert in this arcane Persian style of martial arts. Nobody's ever heard of it. I never heard of it before, and I never heard of it since. But anyways, Gurdjieff said that he studied martial arts. Now, he taught that enlightenment, or, advancing on your spiritual path, could be obtained through dance. And he taught a certain style of dancing, which was based on, I believe, the whirling dervishes and the Sufi mystics of Iran. And I thought I was really intrigued by the idea that movement can trigger, or certainly exercise and develop, a form of spiritual enlightenment. So I remember thinking, well, there's no Iranian, there's no Sufi mystics in Toronto in 1975. But I had a hunch that maybe martial arts would do the same thing if I approach it from that perspective. Now, that's what I did. I approached martial arts looking for the hidden meaning all the time. I'm looking for, what do these movements do? Because a lot of the movements in martial arts, the postures and movements, are very similar to things like yoga, right, and very similar to the whirling dervishes, the mystics, the Persian mystics. So I thought I was looking for that. Now, the fortunate thing for me is a lot of times when people try to use martial arts to develop themselves spiritually, they fail because it's all in their head. There's one thing you cannot avoid in training in martial arts, and that is real combat. And I believe in that lies the kind of spiritual dimension. First of all, we have the forms, the katas, and the routines. And I started off with taekwondo and jiu-jitsu and karate, but I found the routines to be really wooden. There was no flow to it. There was practice.
What was it? Japanese jiu-jitsu or Brazilian? Or the more Japanese?
Well,
okay.
I did the Brazilian stuff many years later. We had the Gracie brothers up at our school back in the early 90s when this all started. And we were doing the cage fighting long before that stuff anyways, because I always believed that you really have to do it for real. Like, you can't just, take a Tai Chi class and then think that you're a warrior. You're not. Tai Chi is very good for you. So is yoga. Doesn't make you a warrior, You can meditate in the woods all day long, every day, but I can guarantee you, if I get you in the sparring arena, all your self-discipline, all your calm internal, what they teach in these types of courses will disappear in a heartbeat the minute I punch you in the nose. So,
That's what Mike Tyson said too. He's like, look, everybody's got a plan. How they used to ask him, right? They're like, what's your strategy for the fight? And he's like, strategy? He's like, everybody's got a strategy till they get hit in the mouth,
Exactly. And that's absolutely true. Now, this is echoed in the Zen philosopher or the Zen warriors. People like my greatest hero was Miyamoto Musashi, who was Japan's 16th century swordsman. He wandered, this guy was
Awesome book.
basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Book of Five Rings. You've read it, right?
Book of Five Rings has taught me a lot. Yeah. It's a great
There
book.
you go. There. And I mean, this guy was the real deal. But not only was he the real deal, he was a brilliant painter and a sculptor and a wood carver and a philosopher. You know, this is what a warrior is. And this is what, you know, I tried to learn in going to China and studying all the martial arts. But what I meant to say is that if it becomes too cerebral, you don't actually get the spiritual advantage. If it's just, you know, you're just doing the breathing exercises and you're going through the forms, listen, it will help. It's great for you. It's healthy for you. But to be honest with you, the ultimate goal is to become a real warrior. And that means you are unperturbed by external circumstances. You are an island unto yourself. And this has reflection in most of the spiritual paths. For example, the Stoics, it's identical to the way of the warriors to be a Stoic, which is identical to the way of the Zen master, which is identical to even Confucius, what he wrote about what it is to be a gentleman. You know, all of these spiritual paths all have a commonality, and that is personal discipline, yes, physical discipline, then artistic discipline. They all encourage you to pursue an art, you know, whether it's music or painting or flower arranging, it doesn't matter. You have to do something that is artistic and creative, and it doesn't matter how good you are. You know, if you're a great painter or you're not a great painter, that has nothing to do with it. It's the act of painting itself that provides the spiritual benefits. And you have to be a philosopher. You can't be, you know, a complete moron. You got to at least make an attempt to understand the meaning of life, you know, and such things as critical thinking, which we are, of course, suffering a great lack of these days. You need to critical think, and you need to understand how critical thinking works. And most importantly, all these paths recommend you got to get punched in the nose. You got to experience it, or otherwise, when it happens in real life, your world will collapse. Once you acclimatize yourself to violence and to be able to take it, now you are a complete person. And that's my take on martial arts.
Well, it's interesting you bring up, you know, Miyoto Musashi. That guy, when he would talk about in the book about when he had to fight multiple enemies, right? It didn't matter. He brought up these scenarios in a tight space or in an open field, or, you know, these people were taught to fight with their sword with two hands. I learned to fight with two swords, you know, one in each hand. And he was like one of the first of his kind to adapt it. And he'd always end what he was saying, like, you should investigate this thoroughly, because he was seeing like universal concepts in the stuff that he was doing. You know, he saw it in everything, and he just defeated everybody. But can you imagine what it would be like to have a guy like that now on the earth? I mean, this guy was just a phenom, like what we see in the movies kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, superhero. Yeah. He's like the Wolverine and Captain America all wrapped into one, you know.
A lot of people used his mentality, his intellect about a lot of that stuff, and you know, CEOs read the books and things like that. But I think they're missing the point, because you bring up the fact that he was a painter too. Like, this guy was murdering people left and right, but was still at peace. That's insane to think about, isn't it?
One of my favorite quotes from him, he called his path Heiho, right?
Yeah.
And he said, once you study one art, you will understand all arts. And I agree with that. So I know myself, you know, I play music, and music has rhythm and harmony, but rhythm and harmony is what you need to fight. And rhythm and harmony is what you need to paint. And rhythm and harmony is what you need to do to make a flower arrangement or a carving. All of this, it's like Tesla. You know, once you to understand the world, you need to understand frequency and vibration. Musashi says basically the same thing. Once you follow this path, you become adept at all paths. Excuse me. And again, this is reflected by Confucius. This is what a Confucius, what he called a gentleman, a chongci. A gentleman is a master at all these paths. You have to be. But this is not confined to the Far East. This used to be something very common in the West, and it's what we used to call a Renaissance man. The medieval Italians, and including the old Roman emperors like Marcus Aurelius, my favorite Roman emperor. You have to be a master of all these things. And the classical education, what they used to call a liberal education, was you were taught music and art and philosophy and geometry and science and mathematics and nature and horticulture and anatomy and swordsmanship. This was part of the curriculum for people in the Middle Ages. Now, we've lost all that now, Joe, because, our education system has been dumbed down to such a degree that, anybody that's got a college degree now, I don't trust them. To me, it just means you're a certified moron, because if you've been through the education system for that long, you probably don't have any common sense left whatsoever. And so the classical education of mastering many different types of sciences and arts and even, Leonardo da Vinci, another classic example of a Renaissance man. Apparently, this guy trained like a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
He really worked out. Like, he was in good shape. This is a Renaissance man. This is a warrior. This is the path of the warrior. This is the fourth way. This is Zen. This is the way of Confucius. And this is the way of the Stoic. They all have these things in common. Now, we never hear about this because this type of education builds the kind of men that can change the world. And that's not what the powers that be want. They don't want smart, competent, self-reliant men, masculine men that can critically think. That's the last thing they want in this world. And they've done everything in their power to destroy that. And now we live in idiocracy. We don't have very many real men around. Joe, you not know. You talk to the women. Where's the real men? They're all soy boys now and liberals, and they're afraid of offending people. My God.
But they also get, since everything is so categorized, right? Like true masculinity, I think people have a really messed up notion of what that is too. And so when people say how they feel, I'm talking about like emotions or how they think, intellect. Well, they start thinking, oh, these are emotions. This is feminine. So I must be a feminine person. So I need to just decide that I'm feminine and be emotional all the time. And it's like, no, dude, like being masculine is being assertive in both areas,
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a good point you bring up there because, even the Stoics, like people think that Stoicism, I mentioned the Stoics because it's the same. Like I said, it's the fourth way, it's Confucius, it's Zen. All these paths are almost identical. But even in Stoicism, it has a bad reputation because it's like, oh, we don't feel anything. No, that's not it at all. You are compassionate and you feel and you can express your emotions, but you express them in a positive way instead of a whiny way. Right. Like there's a big difference, if I share my feelings with you, but if my feelings are, oh, poor me, I'm a whiny little girl and the world hasn't treated me well enough. Well, that is not real emotions. It's like Gurdjieff says, you need to suppress the negative emotions, which is the self-pity, which is the woe is me. Oh, my life is so hard. I get that sometimes too. I have a tendency to feel sorry for myself. I think a lot of people do. But it's like this saying, I used to cry because I didn't have shoes and then I met a man that didn't have feet. Life is hard. Life is, life's a bitch.
It don't have to be though. Like, I mean, seriously. If you accept your situation, accept it for what it is. Make the best of it, and then be like, I have hard times. I've had a hard time with this or a hard time with that. Well, you don't learn jack crap when everything's comfortable.
That's right.
You don't know who you are when you're just constantly comfortable.
Yeah.
You don't have, there's no character building there, you know?
Exactly. You know, what do they say? It's you know, steel is created by hammering iron until it's become steel. I mean, suffering is part of life. You know, even Buddha said that, you know, the first rule of Buddhism is life is suffering. You know, okay, that's pretty clear, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But it does make you appreciate things too. Like, think about it. It does. You know, I kind of can't imagine what it was like when you were a child, man. But when I was a child, there were things that what we do now with technology and these devices and stuff would have been just amazing to even do for 5 minutes. But we don't appreciate water, or I don't know. It's like we got it too easy, I think. And they've made it that way. Look how dependent we are on everything. And now, because we're dependent on all these systems, you know, and I've brought this up on the show before, like, we're having to face ourselves individually, and everybody's like, oh no, you know, this is hard. I don't have anybody I can just vent to and whine to or whatever all the time. Like, I have to, like, stay in my own crap, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, people that know me know that I'm a pretty tough guy, but compared to what our ancestors went through, I'm a baby. Compared to the average millennial, I'm a tough guy. But even with my tough guy persona, I'm very touchy-feely. You know, yeah. I love animals. I love kids. I love friends. I love cooking for my friends. I'm a great cook. But I'll only cook if I have people coming over. I don't cook for myself, you know. But if I'm going to have some people over this weekend, and we have a fire pit in the backyard, and I cook my specialties. I got a couple of specialties. I feed everybody. I mean, we all have a good time. You know, we can play guitar by the fire and stare at the stars. You know, I love that stuff. You know, I love being around people and sharing.
Right.
I feel it that way. But on the other hand, you mess with me, I will take you down. And so this is the balance of masculinity. I mean, you can be a tough guy, and you can also be caring and friendly and sharing with people, and you know, and storytelling and jokes, and oh my God, you know, it's just, I have a lot of fun with people. You know, I love people, even though most of them are, you know, most of humanity is pretty despicable, but you know.
Yeah, well, you think humanity is despicable, huh? I get it.
Well, most of them are.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't blame them, though, Joe. I don't blame them. You know, I don't hold them responsible, because I understand they were all programmed. They were programmed by their parents and their grandparents, and they were programmed by their education system, and programmed by the media, and programmed by the movies they watch, and programmed by the music they listen to. I mean, everybody has got, you know, 2-3 dozen layers of programming installed on their hard drive, and it's all junk programming. You know, you got to rid it. You got to delete all this stuff. It's just like a computer. You know, you keep adding all these different programs, and then the computer slows down. It doesn't work anymore. You got to, you know, go back to a restore point or reset it, you know, delete all this software that you got on there that's not doing anything but screwing things up. It's the same thing with people. So most people are pretty despicable, but they've been programmed that way. The powers that be, that's what they want. They want a bunch of despicable people. They want everybody, you know, scratching each other's eyes out for a buck, because that makes the system work. And so, yeah, I find them pretty despicable, but I also forgive them. And I don't hold it against them. There's a difference, Joe. Some of us are born, and I don't know how else to put this, some of us are born with an immunity to the programming. We wake up early in life. You know, all the great thinkers, they all had, you know, Colin Wilson in his book, The Outsider, where he writes about all the sort of enlightened people that from history that had made great contributions to humanity and philosophy and art. He said they all had an experience in their youth where they kind of woke up a little bit, not completely. You know, waking up is a lifetime process. You know, enlightenment is a lifetime process, but they had a glimpse, and that glimpse changed them and changed their life forever. And it's like you have a bit of an immunity to the programming. So I don't know why that is. Is it genetic? Is it, maybe a past life or something like that? But there's, there are those of us, and I'm sure same thing happened to you, Joe, because otherwise you wouldn't be doing this show. And I know that something would have happened to you at an early age to make you question life. Now, whatever that is, was it genetic? Did somebody teach you that? I don't know. But it gives you a slight immunity to the nonsense. And then armed with that immunity, you can fight your way out of Plato's cave, right? But
yeah, it was pretty much, I mean, I can tell you what it was. It was the passing of, it was watching my mother kill herself, and see, my mom was like you learn, you realize this stuff when you get to a certain age too, but my mom had potential. She had like the most potential I'd ever seen to be. She was smart, she was spiritual, she was creative, but she destroyed herself, and I think that's why I get into what I do here with like the radio station, where I'm always trying to have other people do things for themselves, and see who they really are. Because I had this resentment kind of going on, like, not only did you destroy yourself, but you pushed your kids aside. And to me, I just couldn't fathom that. Because when you're little, man, you look up to your parents like they're superheroes. Why would they do a thing like that? And these imprints don't go away, but you have to, at some point in your life, say, okay, well, I can sit around and blame everything that's wrong with me on my mother, but at some point, I'm going to have to take responsibility for my own actions,
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah. No, and, you can't even blame your mother, because I got to be honest with you. If you do have talent and you do have this amazing potential, the world does not like that.
No, they don't. Yeah, you're right. They don't.
They don't like that at all. Most people, and coming even from your own family, the closest people in your life will turn on you, and the knives will come out. I had a favorite saying, who needs enemies when you've got family? Because they will turn on you if you're a special person, and that's what they do to everybody. That's always, and then what happens is these people can't deal with it. They don't have the support, and so they turn to alcohol and drugs and kill themselves. But are they killing themselves, or is it society killing them? Because you get ostracized and alienated from your family, from your community, because nobody likes somebody that's too special. Oh, no, they don't like that. And they will turn on you and they'll ostracize you. And unless you have, and again, this is why, Joe, what I talk about with the warrior, you got to be a warrior to take it. If you want to be a special person, if you want to be a good human being, you have to be a warrior. Yeah, you got to be tough, because the world will come at you. It's like Socrates wrote that courage is the first virtue that makes the other virtues possible. And what that means is, like, if you're going to be a nice guy, you better be tough. If you're going to be a simp, if you're going to be a weasel, if you're going to be a scheming, manipulative backstabber, well, you don't have to be that tough. You fit in with everybody else. But if you're going to be a hero, oh boy, you better be tough. I once had a guy write to me, because I've taught martial arts for 30 years, and I've studied a dozen different styles. I don't want to go in about how many belts, this and that. None of that matters. What matters is what you end up as. But I had a guy write to me from Scotland, and they said, I read your books, and I can bench press 350 pounds, and I train in so many styles, and every weekend I go into Glasgow and I get into a bar fight and I beat people up. How would you rate me as a warrior? Right? Kind of a strange email. So I wrote him back and I said, well, that sounds very good, but the ultimate test of a warrior, do a good deed. And then when the world turns on you and you're still alive, then tell me about it. And then you're a warrior. I never heard back from him. I can only assume he did do a good deed and the world tore him to pieces. you know, because that's the way the world is. It's ugly. I'm sorry. Like I said, I don't blame them. It's not their fault. There's a group of psychopaths that control everything, and they want everybody else to be a psychopath or a slave. And so, you know, they're in charge of the programming. It's like I tell people, if I was in charge of the education system, you know, everybody would have a doctorate by the time they complete 6th grade. You know, there's no need for 12 years of this nonsense. But I'm not in charge of that. The psychopaths are. And so what you are seeing, this civilization is the product of the sickest, most disgusting people that were ever born on this planet. So they will hate you if you become a hero. They will hate you if you strive to be a moral and righteous person. And they have trained everybody else to hate you. So when I said, you know, go out and do a good deed, absolutely, yeah, do a good deed and then see what happens to you, because they will turn on you. They probably turned on your mother, but she wasn't tough enough and it destroyed her. And what you said too is you've got this imprint, absolutely, but you're an adult now. I've got the same thing. I got a friend, my best friend. He used to be one of my students. He came into my school one day, and I had a policy: if I'll spar everybody anytime, no rules, right? This was before the cage fighting and all that, because, you know, I'm sure you've been to those karate tournaments. It's a big game of tag. Oh, I touched you. Oh my God. You know, point. Okay, game over. You know, ridiculous. I hate that stuff. I always said we fight until somebody gives up, and if you fall on the ground, then we go to ground fighting, or I kick you in the head, whatever you want. He came in here, and he was already a couple of degree black belt in Taekwondo. I kicked his butt. And we became best friends. But he was horribly beaten by his father. And he has anger issues, right? He tends to lose his anger. But the thing is, look, he's 60. I told him, I said, you're 60. You're in control now. Whatever happened 50 years ago does not need to shape who you are now. You have to take charge. And so you lose your temper, get a hold of it, get over it. I don't care what happened to you as a kid at this point. You're old enough now to take charge of your life. So what you said, Joe, too, is what you did is, yeah, what you said was exactly correct. You have that imprint, it will always be there. You will never get over it 100%, right? It'll never get to the point where, it never matters to you anymore. But that doesn't matter. You need to exercise your will and your spirit to be the person you are, irregardless of your previous programming. And to do that, no, you got to be tough. You got to be a warrior. You got to be self-disciplined. Oh, that's a horrible thing. Discipline is not that tough. You know, it always scares everybody. It's not that tough. It's just about making little changes in your habits. But like, if not now, when? You're an adult, right? Are you going to be a victim of your programming your whole life? Or are you going to break it and be the person you want to be?
I get what you're saying. I do, you know, but like at some point, you know, I had this conversation too with my father today. He was talking about COVID and how nobody cares, right? He's like, nobody cares, you know. There's people just out, just spreading this stuff around because they don't have the common sense to care. And what he was trying to say and what he couldn't say was that he thought that I didn't care. And so sometimes, you know, I think people like my father will use that term people do this because he feels like he wants to get a message across to me. But what he's really trying to say is, and this is what's funny, like the subconscious, you know, like you're familiar with Gurdjieff and stuff. So what's really going on is he's saying that I'm older. I'm more subject to this disease according to this information, and I could die from it quicker than these other people could, and they don't seem to care, and that scares me. You know? But why can't he say those things? Because he was raised to believe that, like, toughness was, you know, beating around the bush but still speaking your mind kind of thing, you know?
Well, that sounds like passive-aggressive stuff, and I don't like that either, you know.
Totally passive-aggressive, yeah.
Right? You know, and it's a weakling's way of getting your way. Look, if you have something to say it out front, just put it out there. That's what being, masculine is. It's not about tiptoeing around the subject and being passive aggressive. First of all, he's completely wrong about COVID. It's just a regular virus. It's a seasonal flu, influenza. This whole thing is a complete fraud designed to destroy our freedoms and ultimately enslave us in a system of diabolical evil that's coming, Joe. We are in a serious situation right now. I don't think we have a chance. I think the world is going down, and there are going to be, personally, I think there's going to be millions, if not billions, of people die in the next 10 years from starvation, from war, from famine, from and possibly from the disease, but it won't be this corona nonsense. This is a complete hoax, Joe. All of it, everything. I figured this out when it first came out. I'm always careful about things like that. I keep an eye on it. I knew something like this was going to happen because too many people were waking up now. Too many people are understanding the way of the world, and again, the people that control that hate that kind of stuff. So I knew they were going to do something. I thought it would be something like another false flag terrorist attack, or a virus was in my range of possibilities, but it looks like that's the way they went. That's how they went with, Did you ever see that movie Cabin in the Woods?
No, I haven't. I have not.
Oh, it's a horror movie, but it's kind of a funny horror movie, and it's like everything that happens to these people. It's a horror story, but it's actually just part of a government program to sacrifice victims to their demonic god. It's an interesting twist on the horror story. But you know what? That's our government. So in the movie, it's like, the victims have a choice how they're going to die: zombie attack, or mermaid, or werewolf, or ghost, or depends on what they do. That's the way they're all going to die. They choose the way they're all going to die. And so this was like this. Now the government is going to sacrifice a whole bunch of people to their evil god Moloch or Baal or whoever it is that all these people worship these days. And they're going to kill a whole lot of people. So which way is it going to be? Is it going to be EMP? Is it going to be grid down? Is it going to be terrorist attack? Is it going to be dirty bomb, nuclear attack, World War III? Oh, we chose virus. So it's just the death du jour, But ultimately all run by the government, and all for the purpose of killing a lot of people. That's what they like to do. That's what the psychopaths in charge of this world like to do. Absolutely. They love to see something,
Well, we're going to take our break here, but, it's kind of funny you're saying this. Just had Michael Wan on, and we were talking about the same thing, that they have trained people that, to be a psychopath is a normal thing. We think bad psychology is normal. We don't even know it sometimes. We'll be right back.
Dan Lopez from Spiritual Warrior Today Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Have you ever seen an ad or banner which brought you a feeling that someone is reading your mind or even listening to your conversations? Your online data is being used against you. Surfshark is a VPN service that makes online privacy protection easy and attainable. You can use it on as many devices as you'd like simultaneously. The VPN service that we use at UFO Seekers, plus 1 month free for $1.99 a month. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers. We spend almost as much time online as sleeping, and that's 6 to 8 hours a day. The internet knows a lot about us, and that's why we should care about our online data. Use Surfshark to encrypt your personal information and send it via a secure VPN tunnel so that no one can see it without your permission. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers. You need to protect yourself from surveillance and targeted advertising. Surfshark encrypts all internet traffic sent to and from your devices and ensures that your IP address remains hidden. The VPN service that we use at UFO Seekers, plus 1 month free for $1.99 a month. Visit surfshark.deals/seekers.
My name is Jake. I'm from Billings, Montana, and I am a void walker.
Hey, Joe Root. Thanks for lighting the void. This is Janine in the bluegrass of Kentucky, and I am a void walker.
What's up, guys? This is Damien from San Marcos, Texas, and I'm a void walker. I listen to the show to keep myself aligned with the world.
Hi, this is Laura, aka Laura Lavender. I'm from Las Vegas, and I listen to Lighting the Void because it helps me understand some of the strangest experiences I've had. So thanks for all that you do and for always being there for us, Joe.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied. But you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
This is Malorcas 45, fan of the Fringe FM, challenging everyone to open their mind's eye. Listen to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop to gain precision for your third eye vision.
Hi, this is David Oman with HouseAtTheEndOfTheDrive.com. You're listening to KTLK, the Fringe FM.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of the Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Alex Exum.
This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
This is Reverend John M. Polk, and you are listening to KTLK Digital Broadcasting right here on thefringe.fm.
everybody. Welcome back to Lighting the Void. Stefan Vestappen's here with us tonight. Look, if you want to go for the website for a reference, it's chinastrategies.com. Also, twitter.com/Stefan Strategy. Facebook.com /Stefan.Verstappen. And then youtube.com. And then it's user. I'm going to just drop all these links in the chat room, of course. But it's user Shaolin Mountain Bike. That's funny. I was telling someone today that bike sales are up higher than they've ever been because of this COVID thing. So people are actually learning to do something with what's going on. Two things have broken records in sales: pajamas and bicycles. That's interesting, right?
Yeah. I bicycle everywhere. As a Dutchman, people that know Holland, they're famous for bicycles. My great aunt would bicycle to school where she taught until she was 90 years old. So I'm a big fan of bicycling. I do mountain biking. I biked all through. It's a great way to see the world by bicycle. It's just fast enough that you don't get bogged down, but slow enough where you can see all the details.
Yeah, you get to experience the scenery.
Yeah. And I've gone through like bad neighborhoods like South Central or, Oakland. And so long as you keep bicycling really fast, you'll be okay.
Well, I had the biggest breakthrough in my life from bicycling, actually, when I was younger. It was one of those situations where I had to do way more than everyone else was doing to get to where I needed to go. But it was one of those things where I was like, man, this is going to suck so bad. And then you just adapt.
Yeah. See, that's also the way of the Stoic, too. A Stoic makes things purposely hard on themselves. And Gurdjieff also wrote the same thing. I mean, all these different paths, they have different names, but the core principles are basically the same. And what Gurdjieff said, too, is intentional suffering. So between Stoicism and Gurdjieff and the Zen masters, you force yourself, you be hard on yourself. You do things that are going to be tough, that you don't want to do. But that's what builds character. In order to generate heat, you need friction. So in order to generate energy, and this is true if you study the philosophy of martial arts, and I'm sure you're familiar with Qigong, or in Japanese they call it ki, this internal energy. And Gurdjieff talked about it. Everybody talks about the internal energy, the kind of plasma energy that we all have within us. But to generate more of it, you need friction, which means you need to do things that are tough on yourself. Gives you a bit of a challenge that makes it harder to do. If you just always take the easy road, the path of least resistance, you're not going to develop character, and you're not going to develop this mysterious energy called qi. So, doing things that you might not want to do that. What I'll often do is I'll get on the bike, and I'll have a general direction I want to go to, and then I tend to get lost. But I do it on purpose. And sometimes it takes a long time to get back home. And, I've done things.
You really get lost on purpose? Like you don't know where you are? For real?
Absolutely. I get totally lost on purpose. Now, I used to teach orienteering. That's where you use a map and a compass to find your way through the wilderness. So I have a good sense of direction. We do have a sense of direction. It's in my book, The Way of the Warrior. It's one of the many senses we have. We have more than 6 senses. We have about 9. And that's not even including the ESP type of sense. And one sense that we have is a sense of direction. Men have it more than women. But it makes sense because, our ancestors would have to trudge through the forest where there's no road signs, no roads, no paved paths, nothing. They would have to trudge through the forest for days searching for game and in their hunts, and then they would have to find their way back. But it turns out that scientific studies prove that we do have a sense of direction, just like pigeons, homing pigeons do. We have a particle. It's within the brain that is magnetized, and you can actually train your sense of direction. So I would purposely get lost, and then I would go, 4 hours in one direction. Now I'm completely lost. I have no idea where I am. I don't use a map. The whole fun of it is to get lost and then find your way back home. And the things I've had to do to get back home, you wouldn't normally do. Like, I ended up getting lost one time in a swamp, and with my bicycle. So I spent 2 hours bicycling through a swamp through 3 feet of water. I'm on the bicycle, but the water's up to my waist, and I spent 2 hours going through the swamp. I knew the swamp had to end somewhere, and then I'll get out. Now, would I voluntarily plunge into a swamp up to my chest and spend 2 hours bicycling, or sometimes bicycling, sometimes carrying the bike? Would I do that as something part of my routine? No, I would never do that. It's madness. That's insane. But I put myself in a situation where that's what I had to do to get out of it. And boy, that was the most fun I've had in a long time. I still remember that bicycle trip because it was so much fun. It was ridiculously difficult. And then I had to crawl out of a box canyon, and I strapped the bicycle to my backpack, and on my hands and knees, crawled up this box canyon, up this cliff, this incline that was perilously steep, and it was extremely difficult. But man, that's fun. I love that kind of a challenge. But I wouldn't normally volunteer to do something like that. But I trick myself into doing things that are difficult. Sometimes you have to do that. You have to kind of trick yourself into doing things that are more difficult, because you wouldn't normally volunteer to do something like that.
That kind of makes sense. I think I've done that before, like gotten myself lost in the woods just to see if I can get myself out. But the thing is I really got lost because down here we got these creek bottoms and sloughs that they just turn so many ways, right? And when there's no sun, you start telling yourself, well, I'll just follow this creek, or I know which way it bends. But it's really strange what perception does to you when you turn around and go the other way, and you're like, I could have swore I was going back the right way. Yeah. I had a search party look for me when I was a kid once, because of that.
But I bet you remember that pretty well, don't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I still think today about what could I have done different, like, now that I know more about the woods, there's a lot of stuff I could have done different. I could have simply just left marks, I could have just left, like, the Indians did, just left signs and stuff so I can find my way back.
Yeah. Trail marker, trailblazer. That's what a trailblazer means, to leave marks as you go along. We did that with the orienteering class too. That was part of the game, was you had to find your way through the forest just using a map and compass. But, every, 1,000 yards or so, there would be a ribbon tied to a branch, and that would let you know that you're still on the right path.
Yeah. Have you ever seen those trees where one limb is like grown over the other one? Mm-hmm. And it's totally unnatural. You're like, that's not natural, but you realize, okay, somebody pulled that limb over the other one and just left it there, and it kept growing that way. It's pretty crazy.
Oh. Well, you know where that came from. That was from the Aboriginal peoples. I don't know what to say anymore. Indians, Aboriginal, Indigenous, Six Nations.
Natives, basically, yeah.
That's how they would mark trails in the forest. They would twist a couple of branches around each other, and then they would grow that way. And so it was completely unnatural, but that would mark the trail. So that was the equivalent of a street sign. That's why you see those things.
Well,
years ago, an Indian went through there and said, "Oh, I better mark this trail so I can find my way back, or have somebody else find me." And they grow that way. Yeah.
I am interested in, though. Like, I've studied Western ceremonial magic, the esoteric, a little bit of Eastern stuff. I never got into Sufism or the Gurdjieff work. I've listened to a lot of his stuff on audio, and I've read some of his stuff, and I find the guy fascinating, man. But I didn't quite. I got the concept, I think, as far as the dancing stuff goes, but there's a thing I don't understand about it. So it's like this symmetrical dance, but I got this feeling that has something to do with energy too. Am I right or wrong about that?
No, you're right about that. You're right about that. Goethe says you have 3 brains, and actually science proves you do have 3 brains. You have your intellectual brain, which is the neocortex, which is, which means the new brain. And that's the one that we share with primates, but only humans and primates have this. Then you have the mammalian brain, which is likened to, it's the cerebrum, and that processes emotion and sensation. So we share that with animals. So animals might not be able to think the way we do, but they feel everything we do, and they have the same emotions that we do. And then there's the reptilian brain, or the pons, the cerebellum, and this is the instinctive portion of your body. That we share this with every creature on the planet. And so I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
Well, I was asking you about energy and the movement of the dances. I see the symmetry in what they're doing, but
right. So the movement and the dances really works on an instinctive level, and the movement and the postures. You see, it's not just the movement and the postures. You have to bring your emotion and your intellect into it, but then it kind of unites the 3 brains. Goethe said that people live in one of these 3 brains, and that tends to be true, I find. People are intellectuals, or they're touchy-feely, or they're athletes, the dumb jock. Those are the typical stereotypes of people that live in one of the 3 brains. And if you want to go to yoga, you could describe these brains as your centers, your chakras. And in yoga, they have, 4 types of yoga. One yoga that focuses on the intellect, Theravada yoga, and then there's Bhakti yoga, which focuses on emotions and doing good deeds and morality. And then there's Hatha yoga, we're familiar with, which involves the postures, and that focuses on the body and the instinctive center. Ultimately, the ideal is to have all portions of the body and mind working in harmony with each other. So, yes, you include the intellect, you include the emotions, and you include the movement. Now you have achieved a different state of awareness, a higher state of consciousness, when they all work in coordination. But the dancing and the rhythm and the music really helps to entrain all the centers to work in coordination and support each other, so that you're a complete, whole human being.
That's fascinating. So you do that in Western ceremonial magic too. We call it circumambulation, but it's a lot about circles. It's a lot about doing the same type of energetic thing circularly. And then there's some other like adorations to the sun that are kind of symmetric, but watching the Sufi dances is amazing because they're hitting all these different like points and spins and twirls. And it's like, I don't know. I got to study it more, but I think it's fascinating for sure.
Yeah, it's very deep, and you can spend a lifetime studying it. But the key goal of all these spiritual paths is to become a complete human being, is to become whole, to become one, right? Now, you always hear this in the spiritual writings, to become one. Well, what does that mean? Well, what it means is we are all born basically schizophrenic. We have multiple eyes, multiple personalities, and those multiple personalities are really nothing more than the programming that society has downloaded into your hard drive. Your education, your music, everything. All of this is and most of it are lies and falsehoods, but it's downloaded onto you so that you become schizophrenic. You're this and you're that and you're this and you're that and then you're this and then you're that. So becoming one means to become whole. And it's kind of curious because in psychology, what they try to do when they treat multiple personality disorder is they find a dominant personality, one of those personalities that is the most rational and the most dominant, and then they train that personality to assimilate all the other personalities until there is, again, only one personality. Spirituality and many of the spiritual paths, when they talk about becoming one, if you were to apply it as a multiple personality, what they're saying is that you have to discard all these false personalities. We hear that often in spiritual teachings, discard the false you, the false I, the ego, and become your true self, your authentic self. We hear these terms all the time, but what it means is you take all these parts and you bring them together into one whole. And the best way to do that is through dance and movement. You get the dance, you get the movement, you get the music, you get the drums, you get the rhythm, then add to that your emotion. Now your emotion will kick in anyways because you're dancing and you're moving to a rhythm, and that will stir your emotions. And then you step back in your mind and you observe yourself. So now the intellect is observing the body is enjoying the movement, and the movement is unifying all aspects of your psyche into one unit, and you become one.
That's really cool. And then when you do that in sync with others, it helps you realize that you're one with them too. It helps you feel it. And does it have a creative force behind it too, I wonder?
Oh, it does. It does. That is the source of creation. You ask any artist what their inspiration is, and they can't name it. It's not like, I thought of an idea. It's not intellect. I heard a song. That's part of it. But it's really everything, creation and creativity and inspiration is a combination, in my opinion. I'm just lecturing here as if I know something. But from my personal experience, and this also ties into shamanism. When a shaman dances the spirit, you ever heard that term?
Yes, I have actually. The shaman you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we know what happens when he's dancing the spirit. He's calling in another spirit, but the spirit is coming from within him. So when you dance the spirit, you become that entity. But what actually you're doing is you're becoming your authentic self. You bring in the dance, and you bring in the emotion, the meme, the archetype that is an emotional expression of your authentic self. And then you allow the mind tends to be kind of critical. We're always observing ourselves and passing harsh judgments on ourselves, right? But the mind now joins the dance, and you become one again. In shamanistic tradition, you become one with your spiritual animal, dancing the animal spirit, which I've done many times. But I can tell you, I've danced. I've done my shamanic dances around the campfire under the moonlight in the deep, dark forest. And boy, you're one again. You are empowered. You are an entity. You are, a creative force in the world when you combine all that into your dance.
I don't know how much you know about all of the different animals and stuff, but I've been seeing a hell of a lot of woodpeckers lately. Woodpeckers and cardinals. And woodpeckers are usually rare, like not rare, but you'll get one around, maybe one that'll start knocking on things. But today I had like 4 surround me, maybe 5.
Well, Joe, that means you're a peckerwood.
Yeah, that's what it means, right? Set that up.
I'm teasing. I have lots of woodpeckers around where I live. I live next to a ravine. It's quite wild. And I have animals here all the time. And, I'm 63, so and I look like an old wizard. But I talk to them all the time. I talk to all the animals, the rabbits, the chipmunks, the orioles, and the woodpeckers and the coyotes and Mr. Stinky, the skunk, and I talk to them all the time.
That's really cool, man. That is cool. If you can do that.
Well, I'll tell you why I do that, because they can understand. Now, they don't understand language, but there's a story in the book by Oliver Sacks. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No.
He wrote the book Awakenings. They made it into a movie. But he was a neurosurgeon, and he worked in mental hospitals, and he wrote all these case studies of all these people that had these crazy things. And he wrote about a group of people that they had at the hospital that were called aphasics. And aphasic is somebody that has brain damage that affects the speech center of their brain, which actually is probably a blessing, because our speech center is responsible for the nonstop internal dialogue that we're always talking to ourselves in our head. That's not us. That thing that's always talking in your head, that's not you. It's just a program. That's your Audacity program on your computer. It's always talking to yourself. And in most spiritual paths, they require you to turn off the internal dialogue, because you can't get in touch with your other perceptions, because life is perception. What you perceive is what's real. And this constant talking to yourself is a bad thing. And not always. You need it. It's a function. It's a tool, but it gets out of hand. And so what happens with aphasics is they cannot understand language. And he wrote a story where he walked into a room, and the aphasics were all watching Richard Nixon on TV, and they were laughing their asses off. Now, the odd thing about aphasics is they can read and write. They just can't speak language. They don't understand the audio portion of the language, which goes to show you how specialized the brain is. So that part of the brain that can process words in an audio form is gone. You can talk to them, they don't get it. But they can read words and understand that, And so he asked me, he said, "What's so funny?" And they said, "Well, we're watching this guy on TV, and we don't understand a word of what he's saying, but we do understand that he's lying every word that he speaks."
Right, yeah.
Right? And they thought it was so funny to see this guy up there on TV. And they don't know what he's saying, but they can clearly see that this guy is lying constantly. Now, this is what I believe happens with animals. They might not specifically understand the words you say, but they understand what would be called the feeling tone of your voice. So when I say, "Oh, pretty bird," they don't understand what pretty means. They don't understand what bird means, but they understand my emotion behind it. And like I said before, this is part of the mammalian brain. We share that with all animals. They have the same emotions we do. So when I talk to the animals, I talk to them and I emote through my voice. I use my emotional center to change the quality of my voice so that they understand the emotional tone behind it. And so they know I love them, and they know I'm praising them. And sometimes I scold them, especially Mr. Chips. He's a really greedy little chipmunk. And they get it. They understand the emotion behind the words, but they don't understand the words. So, yeah, I talk to the animals.
Yeah, I understand that totally, because my cat, Leo's like, I get it when he whines. I think I start understanding. I used to be like, get all upset and be like, "What's wrong? I fed you. I did this. I did that." But he's trying to portray an emotion, right?
Yes.
And then once you start picking up on that, then you give it back to him. I'm like, "Oh, dude, I know you're alone," and you pick him up and be like, "It's okay, Yeah. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here," kind of thing. And he just totally gives in. You realize that. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's another form of communication. And, sometimes I use the term the tyranny of language. We get so caught up in the words, and the words aren't that important. All language is an abstraction from reality. If I say house, you'll have a different understanding of the word house than I will or anybody else. So everybody has a different understanding of it. Yet we all think that this is somehow, a unifying factor, but it isn't. The unifying factor is the emotions and the feelings and the actions and the authenticity. And words I find to be a double-edged sword, because words are what the politicians use to con us, and it's what con men use to con us, and it's what advertisers use to con us. So I don't like words very much, because more often language is used as a weapon. But
that's why I don't like texting that much. I'd rather hear somebody's voice.
Me
honestly.
too. I don't get me started on texting. Everybody, always sends me, "How are you doing?" Look, I don't text.
You just don't answer it, huh? That guy's.
I don't answer. Well, I tell them I don't text. I'm not a text guy. I hate all this texting and tweeting and all. I don't do it. I don't do that stuff. If you want to talk to me, call me on Skype. I'll talk to you for 20 minutes. I'm happy to do that. But don't get me into this texting and all that kind, because we are not communicating. It's like Goethe said. In that case, it's pouring from the empty into the void, meaning it's nothing to nothing to nothing. It's nothing. Words mean nothing ultimately, unless you are able to experience life directly through your emotions, through your body, through your movement, through the senses. If I talk to a person, same thing with my most famous video is Defense Against a Psychopath, because I wanted to warn people that our society is populated by really nasty characters, and these nasty characters are predators. They have an alien mentality that the average person can never understand. It's just that alien. They're like insects inside, like reptilians or whatever. They're not human. They are not human on the inside. They're very charming on the outside. They may be handsome or beautiful, but if they're a psychopath, then there is something alien on the inside. Now, I cannot tell who is a psychopath, despite all my years of researching and looking for them and my keen powers of observation. But if I talk to them for a while, I have a better chance of determining who is the psychopath and who is an authentic person. And there's no way you can tell that through writing them.
Yeah, you're so right. Writing is a good way of expression too, especially if you're writing stories or poems or things like that. Sure. But to really get to know somebody, you're not going to get to know them without passing a real time with them, because it's like, everybody's got these images, like they're putting up their masks on social media and their masks on their website and on their blogs and stuff. But if you really hung out with them for a little bit, then you'd really know who that person is.
That's right. And then hang out with them on a canoe trip through the woods.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I do. I'm really, I understand that a lot, because I pick up on that a lot. If someone says, even a tone of voice, I'm sorry, I can tell when somebody's really sorry and when they're not, when they're just saying it so they're trying to get it over with, and when another person really feels bad, yeah, it's a connection. And I feel like whatever the psychopath thing is you're talking about, Michael Wan touched on this earlier in the week, yesterday, that this system that we're in definitely disconnects us. I mean, it connects us in a way as far as introductions go, but it does disconnect us too if we start letting it own us instead of we owning it, kind of thing,
Absolutely. Now, there's other things, and I mentioned this in my book, The Way of the Warrior. I talk about the senses and how to, senses is your interaction with the world. So the more you can improve your ability to sense things, the more in the world you are, the more aware you are of your situation on this planet and in this universe. Now, there is, and I refer to the writings of Helen Keller. Are you familiar with her?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So for the listeners that might not be familiar with Helen Keller, she was very famous. She was born, she lost her ability to see, hear, and speak due to I think it was yellow fever or Rocky Mountain fever when she was a young girl. And she grew up unable to see or hear or speak. So how do you go through life not being able to hear or see or speak? Well, one of her other senses became dominant, and that was the sense of smell. And what she writes about her ability to smell things, she can smell a person's personality. She could tell you if that was a good person or a crazy person based on how they smelled. And again, going back to Oliver Sacks and his writings, and from the book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, he wrote about a case where there was a guy who was addicted to cocaine. He was snorting a lot of cocaine, and he developed a tumor on his olfactory lobe. And one night he went to sleep, and he had a dream that he was a dog. And the next day he woke up, and suddenly his sense of smell dominated his life. He could smell everything. He could tell what a playing card was based on the amount of red and black ink. So he could wave a queen of spades under his nose, and he could smell it and tell you it was the queen of spades. He said he could smell when somebody was about to ask a question. And, the details. No, it's absolutely insane. Helen Keller said that when she walked into a house, she could smell all the families that had lived in that house previously. And she could tell you if those families were happy or if they were divisive and they were arguing a lot. She could tell that just from the smell of the house. And she could tell you when they had lived in that house based on the smell. So the family that lived here 10 years ago was a very loving family, but the family that lived here 50 years ago, they fought a lot. And the father was an alcoholic, but the family that lived here 100 years ago, the mother took too much opium. And she could smell that by walking into a house. So this is the amazing ability the human body and our senses and our brains are able to pick up this information. That information is there. It's verifiable. You and I can't do that because we haven't developed it to that sense. But it may take place subconsciously through something that's called synesthesia. Now, synesthesia is an effect that the brain has, and it takes place somewhere deep inside the primal portions of our brain, and probably in the in the pons or in the I forget the name of it. It's where all the senses that come into the brain, they all come to a central switching board, right? Yeah. And then is sent to the the talking portion of the brain. Visual is sent to the back of the brain, right? But at some point, all these senses mingle and they become one. So it may be that when you have an instinct or a sixth sense, it may be that you're smelling it. Or maybe you're picking it up. For example, when I was teaching a blind woman, she picked it up. I realized what was going on, and that was her sense of magnetism. There's a story.
Well, I hate to do this. We got to get out of here because the next show's coming on, but that's what happens when we start late. So we got to have you back to finish this stuff, man, for sure.
Okay, yeah, we can talk about this. And but it just goes to show you the amazing potential that we have. And it's been destroyed in us by the system, by the culture we live in. And, to follow the path of the warriors, to regain all those senses, to all those sensations, and to become strong enough to live this society, in this crazy society, with authenticity.
I agree with you 100%. And thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. I can't wait to talk to you again, man. This was really cool.
All right. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
You guys go check out his website too. Get the books. ChinaStrategies.com is the website. I'll leave all the links there in the chat room too. I appreciate you guys being patient with me while we're going through these transitions and changes. Tomorrow night, we're going to do a rebroadcast so we can catch up on some much needed stuff here, and we'll be back next week. But there's more, a new broadcast coming on for you. The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable's coming up next. Big shout out to the Fringe FM team, all you guys in the Fringe FM chat. Please don't copy the show without written permission. Thanks to Steezy Stevie and Chronox and Pacho. Thank you, brother. We'll see you guys next week. Have a good weekend. Good night.